Welcome, dear listener, to Spirituality in the Brain. I am Vanessa Anceloni, your host, and this segment is all about the latest news in neuroscience and the teachings of Spiritism. On May 27th of this year, 2014, a group of scientists published in the reputable Journal of Neuroscience the latest findings that may change the way we treat depression. Dealing with stress, do we cope or do we quit? Researchers identify neurons that determine whether an individual will be depressed or resilient. We all deal with stress differently. For many of us, stress is a great motivator, spurring a renewed sense of vigor to solve life's problems. But for others, stress triggers depression. We become overwhelmed, paralyzed by hopelessness and defeat. Up to 20% of us will struggle with depression at some point in life. And researchers are actively working to understand how and why this debilitating mental disease develops. A team of researchers at Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, led by Associate Professor Bo Lee, reveals a major insight in the neuronal basis of depression. They have identified a group of neurons in the brain that determines how a mouse responds to stress, whether with resilience or defeat. For years, scientists have relied on brain imaging to look for neuronal changes during depression. They found that a region of the brain called the medial prefrontal cortex becomes hyperactive in depressed people. This area of the brain is well known to play a role in the control of emotions and behavior, linking our feelings with our actions. But brain scans aren't able to determine if increased activity in this area causes depression or if it's simply a byproduct of other neuronal changes. Dr. Lee set out to identify the neuronal changes that underlie depression. In the work that was just published, Lee and his team, including Dr. Wang and Dr. Perova, used a mouse model for depression known as learned helplessness. They combined this with a genetic trick to mark specific neurons that respond to stress. They discovered that neurons in the medial prefrontal cortex become highly excited in mice that are depressed. These same neurons are weakened in mice that aren't deterred by stress, what scientists call resilient mice. But the team still couldn't be sure that enhanced signaling in the medial prefrontal cortex actually caused depression. To test this, they engineered mice to mimic the neuronal conditions they found in depressed mice. We artificially enhanced the activity of these neurons using a powerful method known as chemical genetics, said Lee. The results were remarkable. Once strong and resilient mice became helpless, showing all of the classic signs of depression. These results help explain how one promising new treatment for depression works and may lead to improvements in the treatment. Doctors have had some success with deep brain stimulation, which suppresses the activity of neurons in a very specific portion of the brain. We hope that our work will make deep brain stimulation even more targeted and powerful, and we are working to develop additional strategies based upon the activity of the medial prefrontal cortex to treat depression. Now, dear listener, this beautiful research that was supported by Charles Dana Foundation and the NIH together brings new light to understanding depression. And this text that we just read was published in the website neurosciencenews.com. Spiritism would explain why, because we know everything begins in the spirit mind. So it's fascinating that science finally found another key to understanding depression, that there is something we can change in the brain and everything else changes. This tells us, spiritists, and also the ones who embrace science, that if we change the way we stimulate our brain, we're gonna change the way we feel. And the question is, who stimulates the brain? The spirit, the mind. We do. This means that if we change the way we think, if we change the vibrational field that is stimulating the physical brain, we're going to change the way we feel physically as well, and we can change depression. This tells us, number one, that by receiving passes at the Spiritist Center can change the stimulation of the brain. Andrea Lewis, in the book Mechanisms of Mediumship, talks about the fact that passes changes not only the mind of the spirit, the perispirit, the physical body as well. So by receiving passes, we can help somebody who is experiencing depression. By also doing psychotherapy, we can also change the way we're stimulating our brain with our thoughts and feelings. And we would add by the practice of mindful meditation, something that Jesus certainly did, and we need to emulate. As Joana de Angelis says in a beautiful message published on issue 24 of the Spiritist magazine, when we meditate, we defragment our mind. Certainly we will change the way we are vibrating and creating stimulation for our brain. So we would suggest to you, if you're feeling signs of depression and stress, find your way to stop, meditate, find help as well, and create a new way of thinking and feeling. And you see that in the short or long run, you're gonna feel the great effects of the spiritual psychological therapy to treat depression. It's also very preventative too. If you have any questions about this very segment, please write to us at kardecradio.com. We have a contact form. We'll be happy to listen from you. In the meantime, keep feeling the blessings of God always.